Cool. So, Colette, welcome to the Tech Recruitment Podcast. You have so much experience with the employer branding, so I'm super excited about discussing this topic with you. So, welcome again.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Colette, with all these years of experience working with the companies and helping them improve their branding, what would you say is the biggest issue or the biggest problem they have?
Sure. So, as far as obviously talent acquisition, which is clearly the discussion here, and in particular in information technology, it is one of the hardest type of roles to actually recruit for. We call it the STEM, which I'm sure your audience is very familiar with: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So it's one of the areas that organizations are investing a fairly significant amount of money to be able to not just be able to create a story that's going to stand out in the marketplace, but also where they're also looking at personalizing their value proposition. So, we've, from an EVP perspective, which is the employer value proposition, some of the challenges that they face is, how do we differentiate ourselves, truly differentiate ourselves from all the other competition? I know that, I often do searches for organizations through our audits. And when it comes to IT roles, if you simply go on to a place like Indeed and you do a search, you're going to see thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. And it's even become more challenging to attract talent for the simple reason that we are now a global pool of talent, with organizations following post-COVID really focusing on remote and hybrid, but in particular remote. It's really opened up opportunity from one side of the world to the other to be able to attract the very best talent. So we're not just dealing with local and regional competition. Now we're dealing with competition across the globe. So that would be their biggest challenge: is how do we differentiate ourselves so that we can attract the very best?
Well, that's really an interesting topic also, because we work with companies from San Francisco or from the United States, and we help them find IT professionals. And it's just so difficult to help the IT professionals realize, why is the other company different from some other company? Like, which opportunity should they pursue and why? So a lot of the talent acquisition specialists or HR managers who are now listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, they may wonder, okay, so what do I do? Where do I start? How do I improve the branding of the company? So what would you say are some quick wins? Like, if someone invites you to come to their company, what are some things that you look at first?
Well, I'm going to start with what I would consider foundational, which means if you're not doing this, you need to do it now. And that really is understanding your target audience. So, I think recruiters understand personas. That persona development is absolutely critical. And ultimately what that is becoming intimate with your target audience. And in this case, obviously, it's information technology talent. And the reason why we start there and why we need to become intimate with their wants, needs, and desires, because you cannot actually be relevant and resonate with them until you know what they want and how well you can deliver on those needs. So the very first thing I highly recommend is going through and developing personas on your target audience. You're going to find out information of things like, what's important to them? What are their attraction drivers? Now, typically in information technology, there's a few things that are top of mind. There is, of course, compensation, and that's 100%. It doesn't matter what persona you're actually building. Compensation is the number one attraction driver, but not everybody can compete on that. So what are the other options that perhaps you can fulfill or provide a IT person that maybe somebody else can't? So it's things like learning and development, working on innovative projects, working on technology that might be more new than what they're working on today. Having impact not just for the company that they would be working for, but the impact on the industry as a whole. So you want to find out exactly what motivates the person that you're actually targeting, that you want to hire. And IT is quite broad. So you really want to get it to experience level, as much demographic as you possibly can. Obviously, education, all of that can play a role on your persona and the elements of that. Mm-hmm. The other reason why you want to do persona development is because once you know what they want, now you need to be able to compare how well as a company do we deliver on this. And if you are able to deliver on that, then we'll talk a little bit about how do you actually shape that messaging to get it out there. But before you do that, if you're not delivering, it's very hard to compete for talent if you're missing fundamental needs that your target audience needs. So it's not as simple as shaping your messaging. If you don't have the right message, if you're not offering the right opportunity, then you need to fundamentally look at your organization to say, what do we need to do to improve? But let's put that to the side and assume you have a great value proposition. So from there, once you understand the persona, it's going back to how can we meet this individual's needs? What are they lacking today that perhaps we can fulfill? And that's where you define your value proposition. And this is where you differentiate yourself. So what we use is a technique called evidence-based EVP. And evidence-based EVP goes beyond making claims about what you offer, and you substantiate it with evidence. So if an organization is simply making claims like, we're a family-friendly environment, we invest in our people and we invest in their growth, we are an innovative organization that are a leader in our field, sure, that all sounds great. But guess what? Everybody is saying that. So the key to this is differentiating yourself by the real experience, the real impact that you're not just having in the world and within your community, but what is your value proposition? How is that impacting the people when they join the organization? So evidence-based is not just making claims, but substantiating that with actual evidence. So, for example, our people are engaged here. They feel empowered. We are an organization that put our people first. That's why 98% of our employees tell us that they are, ABC through our engagement surveys. So it's not just making claims now. You're substantiating it, saying, not only do we do this, but we have proof to tell you that if you come here, you're going to experience this too. So that's what we reference as evidence-based. So shaping that's going to be very important, knowing what that value proposition is, having something that truly differentiates yourself, which then goes, we also have to look at our competition. So what are they saying versus what we are saying? How can we stand out? How can we again make sure that we're playing on the heartstrings, because there's always an emotional connection, especially when it comes to people making a career move. It's not like a product. I always used to say, it's not like you're buying toothpaste. You have a whole selection, but you can easily be persuaded to maybe a different brand. When it comes to your career, it's an emotional connection. So it's really important that your message delivers on that. So could get into lots and lots of details on how to do that. But that really is the key, is how do you differentiate? And it's really through your employer value proposition. And then, of course, how you bring that to market through recruitment marketing itself.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned this, because the job requirements and job descriptions are usually full of this cliche kind of fluff, right? We are innovative. But often, as you said, it comes with the question, so what, or what does it really mean? So the transition from the cliche to something meaningful is really important. And I think you said something very important, and it's a great tip. When you look at your value proposition, if there is a so what question and you can't answer it, that means you do not have a differentiating value proposition. You have to have the so what, you have to have the answer. Mm-hmm. And in that case, should you remove the kind of cliche or the claim from the job requirement or from the website completely? Or would you kind of dive deeper to what does it really mean? Or maybe there was someone 2 years ago who meant something with it, but the person is long gone and it still remains on the job requirement?
Yeah, I would definitely say, again, going back to the persona. So when you look at the wants, needs, and desires of your target audience, if that, for example, let's say they want to be working on new technology, and your EVP says, work on the latest technology, and it's in your job description. Well, you don't want to remove that because it aligns to their needs, but you want to expand on that. So what does that mean? If I'm working on new technology, excite me. What kind of technology am I going to be working on? And when I work and use that technology, what kind of impact am I going to be having on either the organization or the greater good of the community, or perhaps even broader as the world? So you definitely want to expand it. You want to put proof, and going as far with evidence, with stats and facts. That's where you want to get to. Just don't stop on making the claims if it aligns to the wants, needs, and desires of your target audience.
Now, when you explain these steps, a lot of people may kind of see this as the complete next level to what they usually do, because usually recruiters or HR managers, talent acquisition specialists, they just get the job requirement from the hiring manager and then they start sourcing candidates, right? But with what you say, it adds some additional layer, if we could say so, to the activity. So I mean that's great. I'm just wondering how to tackle this. Like, when would be a good time to actually dive deeper to this exercise, and how to convince the hiring manager that this is really an important task, because usually they are busy. The last thing they want is to hop on a 2-hour-long workshop to talk about the values. So based on your experience, like, when is it the good time to plug this into the recruiting process?
So I would say start with some quick wins, as you mentioned previously, and that is speak to as many people. So when you look at your organization, and if you're hiring for specific roles, you probably have people already fulfilling those roles. So you can do a focus group, but even make it more simpler. You could sit down with each individual and have a series of questions. Why do you work here? Why do you stay? What gets you excited every day? What is the most attractive thing about the job that you hold every day? There's a whole host of questions. And that's real information. That's the truth about the employment experience. So even just simply talking to a small group of people, understanding where the common themes are based on those interviews will give you immediate insight to what your value proposition is. Then they also can help shape your persona. So you can even ask them, what do you look for? If you were to leave this organization, what are the top things you would be looking for? They'll help you with that. Where would you go to look for work? Well, I go here and here. They're going to help you with recruitment marketing. You're going to ask them things like, when you go to actually learn more to be more successful in your job, are you self-learning? Are you attending training? You're going to now start to understand, well, where are these people hanging out online? And that'll help shape, again, perhaps your social marketing. So speaking to those individuals, they're inside your organization, that's a great place to start. Now, once you have that information, that hiring manager needs to make sure that they're playing a role in that, because we have the target audience, but it's the give and get. So here's what they get working at the organization, but what are we giving as an employer? So sitting down with that hiring manager and making sure they are very clear on the type of individual that they're looking for. And this is more than just qualifications and years of experience. This is, again, persona. What type of personality? What are the traits that's going to make them successful here? What are the traits that have made others successful here? So getting input from them. To build the case to spend this time with a hiring manager, quite frankly, especially in information technology, all you have to do is do a search on Indeed and say, this is what we're competing against. This is how many companies that currently have the same type of job postings that we are looking, same type of job postings that we have. and then also look at the amount of remote. That will give them an understanding of the level of competition and why it's important that we need to stand out. We need to differentiate ourselves. We need to create a desire for people at minimum to want to learn more about what we can offer. And hopefully in some time, you're going to actually get these people to apply.
And this is actually a great tip, because this kind of competition research could also help someone from a staffing agency to be seen as the professional recruitment consultant, someone who is not just sourcing candidates, but provide some additional value, as you say, do the research, compare what do other companies offer on the marketplace. So this is great. I mean, that's the transition from the sourcer to a proper consultant.
Absolutely. And, I know we want to talk about some long-term things that you need to be doing that's going to be important. And you just kind of triggered it there. And that's around not just staffing, but corporate and staffing recruiters. Simply leading with a job order, especially in hard to fill jobs like information technology, where you're just simply, you have an order and you're sourcing. That is not going to help you compete for talent. Nurturing relationships is what's going to help you compete for talent. And that is becoming a complete shift. Those organizations, like your high-tech companies, Google's a great example of this. Even Shopify, who attract a lot of IT people. It's that social marketing. It's, okay, how do we build a relationship? Well, we do it through social marketing. And there's two ways to do that. Putting out relevant content that's helpful and valuable. And recruiters can do this themselves. Doesn't have to be driven from your corporation as a whole. You can do it yourself. Putting out things like, hey, here's some industry stats. Here are some reports that might be relevant to IT. It might be sharing a story about something that took place within the information technology department that had some serious impact, got some great news. There is huge opportunity for recruiters on their own to put out personal content on their own LinkedIn profile to start building relationships with IT people. So this goes broader than just simply building a pipeline, because I think we've defined pipeline as people that sign up for job alerts or a library of names that you actually can go to when that job opens up. That's not going to help you compete. Nurturing relationships, providing valuable content, keeping in touch, sharing a newsletter with with people that you hope one day might consider your organization. That's the long-term view, but you need to be doing things like that now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, now my head is kind of spinning from all these ideas, and I'm just kind of wondering, how can we provide more value to the clients? It's just so cool. But also some kind of skeptics may be wondering, like, okay, that sounds great. I know we should be doing this, but does it really help us to get new candidates on board? Because also with a lot of IT professionals, it's quite transactional. They just finish a project and then they start looking for a new one. They look at the compensation, as you said, it's the biggest driver. So they just kind of go for the one with the highest rate. So, I mean, have you been working with some high-tech companies recently? And can you share some like before and after kind of examples of the impacts that this transition actually delivered?
For the social marketing in particular?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Social marketing or the branding or the employer, but the persona?
Absolutely. So we work with a broad-based, so technology companies, but also, pretty well every industry. But within all of those industries, one of the hardest jobs to fill is information technology. So almost every time we get engaged in employer branding project and we talk about where their difficult areas are to fill, IT is 100% always part of that. Could be other roles, but part of that. Wow. So, one organization that I'm thinking of, is actually in the financial sector, which IT, we often think is finance, is actually IT driven. So, and even some banks are actually, shaping their whole branding themselves as being a technology-based organization. So one company that we have worked with, they were doing building pipelines. They had a fairly good EVP. But because, again, this is hard to fill, and to your point, often people don't make a shift unless they're completely dissatisfied in their job, or a recruiter calls them and they're presenting more compensation, as an example. But the way of the world is we are all connected. We are all connected, and social media is allowing us to do that. What we are finding is people that are in demand, that have the right skills that we're all competing for, they are on social. And what we're seeing is we're seeing a transition from people saying, I'm dissatisfied, and now I'm going to look, to people that are satisfied. But because they're getting relevant content from organizations that are showcasing the inside of the organization about what it's like to work here authentically, again, aligned to the desires of an IT person, the more content, the more inside content that you're sharing, the impact that organizations are having through their IT people, the social responsibility activities, all of that is now out there organically. And that is actually what's starting to move people sooner to considering an organization that you're not even connected with. So with social marketing as an example, and this client in particular, they were putting out posts on LinkedIn that says, we're hiring. If you want to work for an innovative company, check us out, we're hiring. That does not give you an inside view about what it's like to work here. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. How are we creating an emotional connection with the people that we want to work for? It's storytelling. So we started to work with this organization to develop what we call themes. So what are all the themes that we could be using that's attractive to the IT people out there that would connect with them, that they would want to learn about? They would want to hear these stories and start building this bigger following within our social platforms. We did that. We developed those themes, and then we identified the actual stories. And those stories can be videos, they can be employee generated, they can be typical text and images, but we started to put out consistent content about the employment experience through storytelling, and they began to get huge number of followers, which then led to more qualified applications where people were coming through saying, I want to learn more. Even when there wasn't even IT, the specific IT job that was available, these individuals were reaching out specifically to this financial company, this bank, and saying, putting their hand up and saying, hey, I just want to express that I'm interested in your organization. So it really proved, again, it goes back to that social media marketing. This is how you can connect on a broad base, and building a much more nurtured pipeline versus a list of potential candidates that you can connect with.
So it's more about emotions these days, thanks to the social
Very
media.
much so. And very much so. All of our decisions as human beings, they are based on emotion, whether we like it or not. Yes, of course. We think with our minds as well. That is very important. But generally, it's that emotion, it's that feeling, it's that gut. Will this be successful? Will it not? Is it the right choice for me?
Awesome. I'm kind of thinking also about the split between the corporate talent acquisition specialist and the staffing agency recruiter who may be listening to this, and one could really love this idea of doing the employer branding, and the other may hate it just because it kind of competes with what they do, the staffing agency recruiters. Like, do you, based on your experience, do you see the staffing agencies also help their clients improve the branding? Like, is it not kind of against the, them charging the rates for successfully hired candidates? I'm just kind of thinking, Like if this is something that only the corporate internal talent acquisition specialists usually do, or do you also partner with staffing agencies and do you provide this as a service together?
So we predominantly work with corporations. I have worked with a staffing agency most recently, and I have to give kudos to this organization because they get it. So I think the staffing industry has a significant opportunity to start thinking as employer branders on behalf of their clients. So I started in staffing, in IT, as I mentioned, IT specifically years ago. I still associate myself with many IT recruiters. And as I mentioned, this organization in staffing. And one of the challenges that it's twofold, both the corporation that you're working with, but the staffing firm itself. Some of the biggest challenges is you get a job requisition from the client. You know, it's probably not retained. It's not a retained search. So you're out there and you're competing against all these other staffing firms and may the best person win, right? Very, very challenging business. However, how do you differentiate yourself in staffing through employer branding? Well, you need to study the corporation that you are recruiting for. And there is, if the company you're working for is not giving you the information that you need to sell the opportunity, and I mean sell the opportunity from an employment experience, the qualifications requirements, yes, you have that, but how do you actually sell the client? And not often, and very often, you're not getting that information from your client. So you go to things like their website. You go to employer reviews. What are people saying about the organization? You can look at, often they have annual reports if they are a public company. There is a wealth of information that you can actually personally define that value proposition on behalf of that client, where then you are actually in a competitive advantage, so that when the other staffing firm is actually contacting potentially someone similar, so similar candidate, you're going to have an advantage because it's not just about qualifications and who the company is and how many employees they have. And, you're getting deeper into the employment experience and making more of a connection and creating excitement for that candidate that says, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to explore this. I'd like to actually consider this opportunity and take that next step. So that's where employer branding comes in from a staffing perspective and how they can apply it for their clients.
Very interesting, very interesting. And ideally, if they work on an exclusive basis, right, and then they probably even charge them for this service to create some videos or maybe some blog posts or posts on the social media, and at the same time, they charge the success fee.
100%, yeah, 100%. And even as simple at the basic form is creating, a discovery form where you're asking questions about the culture, the workplace, things like career growth, career pathway, type of exciting projects and impact that they have had within the industry. Obviously, remuneration, is important, but rewards. How are they rewarded? How are they recognized? If I have a ton of content on this. If people go to look at my LinkedIn, I have lots of cheat sheets, different tips. Create your own discovery form and use that as part of the qualifying when you're speaking to the client about the job requisition itself.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Well, I really have this itch now to just go back to work and start, approaching
Good.
some clients to see how I can help them improve their branding and maybe even connect with you and see how we could collaborate. Which kind of also reminds me to where can people find a bit more about you? But before you answer that question, why don't you tell us, before we wrap it up, some kind of a final advice on, what could someone who is working in a corporation, like you just mentioned, you work for some corporations. So if you just imagine someone who is sitting there, probably a bit frustrated because the management, they don't give the person, enough budget to hire some agencies, and the person is just sitting there alone, kind of frustrated. Like, what can they do to get more candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does, quite frankly, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. So if you have not done a build out of the persona that you're looking for and clearly defining your value proposition and substantiating that with proof, you need to do that. Now, some people in my industry would say, well, you shouldn't let a recruiter define the value proposition. Well, you're not doing it in isolation. If you are talking to people within your company, your target audience, let's say you're struggling for a developer with certain skill that you're looking for or technology, go and have a conversation with those individuals. Let them help you shape the persona. Get to know them extremely, extremely well. They are wonderful to say, if you ask, I'm struggling trying to find talent or attracting talent. Put yourself in my shoes. Take a look at this job description. How does this sound to you? Would this be appealing? No. Does it represent what we truly offer? No. Okay, how do I actually enhance this? What more can I be doing? They are gold. So as simple as doing that and getting a true perspective on the employment experience that will feed in not just your value proposition, where you can go and recruit for individuals. What we call is traditional methods, our job boards, you got that covered. It's the non-traditional methods. Are you participating in groups? Are you engaging in relevant groups where your target audience is hanging out? Could you be advertising what we call out of home in areas that IT, there's hubs that are getting together on a monthly basis? Again, the people that you speak to, the persona, through that development process, you can find out a wealth of information that'll cost you nothing except your time. And that will truly help you better attract talent and find and compete against talent.
Awesome. And you mentioned all these checklists that can also help, that people can find on your profile. So where can actually people find a bit more about you and the content that you produce?
Absolutely. So I hang out on LinkedIn. That's really where my targeted audience is. And I typically put out content on a daily basis. This year, I'm actually working more on videos, trying to devote more time to that and more in-depth education to help people specifically in talent acquisition. So if you head on over to LinkedIn, you type in Colette O'Neill. I am the founder of Advanced Human Capital Solutions. So of course, we're on LinkedIn as a company as well, but really where I invest my time in sharing relevant content is on my LinkedIn profile.
Great. So I'll also include this link in the episode show notes and also on YouTube in the description. Great. So thanks a lot for being a part of this podcast. And I'm glad that you started the year with these videos together
You'll
with
see
me.
more of my face, yes. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, thank you. See you soon again.
See you soon. Take care.